So in this part of the tutorial, I'm going to be using the barbarian character from the last one to show the process of creating a new clip. Just before we get started, I'll show you the finished animation so we can see what we're going to be working towards.
What are you waiting for? Get him!
Okay. So, first, let's take a look at that file. So this is a LipSync data clip that's been created in the clip editor. Now, if you're wanting to start from scratch, you can go to Window, Roger Digital, LipSync Pro, and open Clip Editor. Or if you've got an existing clip like this one, we can click the Edit LipSync Data button there. Either way, you'll end up with this. Now, as you can see, this is the file that I've already created that we've opened here. And so I'll just use this to show you the various features of the editor. The first thing you'll probably notice is this big waveform here. Now this is the waveform of the audio that you can drag in an audio clip up there. You can actually use the clip editor without an audio clip, but usually for lip sync animation you'll want to be syncing to audio. This bit immediately above it here is the timeline. And in this mode, which is phonemes, which you can see from the selected part of the toolbar here, these are the phoneme markers that I referred to in the previous tutorial. Now each marker is a single one of those phoneme poses that we set up on the character. We can see if I switch over to the emotions tab, these are emotions which, unlike phonemes, have a duration of time, and gestures, which we've got one of, and I'll go into the details on that in a little bit. If we go back over to the phonemes tab now, I can show you that you can create new markers on the timeline, either by clicking anywhere in the waveform to move the playhead there, and then clicking the Add Phonemes button and choosing the phoneme you want, or you can right click anywhere on the waveform and click Add Marker here, and that will add one at the position of the mouse when you right clicked. You can also delete markers by right clicking them, you can change them to a different marker. And if you've got a marker on the timeline, like say this one, you can click it and drag it to move it around. The same goes for emotion markers. You can add new ones the exact same way, and you can drag the start or end handles to change when they start and end, like that. And you can drag these little blend in handles here to change how long it takes for the emotion to blend in or out over the course of time. So that's the basics of using the editor itself. Let's see how you'd go about creating one of these from scratch. I'm not going to save changes there, and I'm going to select the raw audio here and press Ctrl-Alt-A, which is the keyboard shortcut to open the editor. With this open now, you can see we've got the waveform, but we don't have any markers on the timeline. Now we could go through manually and listen to it bit by bit, you know, sort of go, that's a W there, add phoneme, W, etc., and fill in markers for the whole thing. Or, and this is the way you'll probably want to do it most of the time, we can use AutoSync. Now AutoSync that we set up in the very first episode is the automatic lip syncing component. Now since version 1.5 of LipSync, there are several different AutoSync modules available, and they come with presets to make them easier to use. Now we're going to cover both of these legacy and default presets in a second, but first I'm going to show you the clip settings section of the clip editor. If we go to Edit Clip Settings, or click on the little time readout down here, we get this clip settings box, and you can see there is a transcript section in here. At present, there are two ways of getting a transcript into the clip editor. You can either type one out here manually, or if you have one already in a text file alongside your audio clip and with the same name, for example, like the Gettysburg text file here, that will actually be loaded in automatically when you load the audio file. So if I just drag Gettysburg into this bar here, we can see we've got a transcript for it already loaded in. and that was pulled straight from this text file. We haven't already made one of those in advance for our audio here, so I'm going to just type that out manually. The reason we need this is that we're going to use the Montreal Forster Liner module in AutoSync, which requires not only an audio clip, but also a text transcript in order to work. This is the module that provides by far the much better results, and it also works on both macOS and Windows. If it isn't convenient for you to be able to get a transcript, then there is another option for you, but you have to be warned that the results may vary quite a lot. This is quite a short clip, and it was easy to type out the transcript, so I'm just going to press save, and then go to AutoSync, Presets, and press Default English, which is the Montreal Forster Liner preset. This will start running now, and it's actually opened up a command line prompt over here, which will just show us exactly what it's doing. And there you go. Now that it's done, we've got some markers on the timeline. The clip editor also has a preview mode, which is accessed by this little eye icon up in the top right. If I click this and then choose the character in the scene, Barbarian, and drag this out of the way of his face, we can play it back and see what the results from AutoSync look like.
What are you waiting for? Get him!
So that's pretty good already. I did actually go in and adjust a few of these markers myself for the final version that you saw at the start, but for the most part these are just the raw results and they're often pretty usable. For reference, I'll show you what the results from the old legacy mode, which is also known as Pocket Sphinx, look like. This you can use without a transcript, but well, you'll see the downsides in a second, I think. Already, just looking at this timeline, you can see that doesn't quite look right. And if we play it back...
What are you waiting for? Get him!
So, usable, especially at the start there, but you'll often have to do a lot more cleanup to be able to use this version. Let's just run the default one again so that we get those better results back. And then I'm just going to try and tidy up this end a little bit. So you can hear he actually holds the word him for a little bit longer. So what I'm going to do is there you go, that's the A phoneme. And I'll just add a second one here. And drag that to about there. Because we've got these two markers here that are the same, we can right click the first one and tell it to sustain. You'll notice this draws a little line between the two markers. This guarantees that the animation will stay the same between those two markers. I'm also going to move the M further forward here and push this rest in a bit as well, I think. There you go. I think that looks good for the more cartoony style of the character. Now that we've done phonemes, I'll go into the emotions tab and we can start adding some emotions. I can't remember exactly what I did in the other version, but I think I'll put a serious emotion in first. As I said before, you can add any emotions you like to the system and they'll all show up in the clip editor. Let's put that maybe around there.
What are you waiting for?
In a bit more, and like I did in the other one, I'm going to turn the intensity down a bit so that his eyebrows don't go down quite so far.
What are you waiting for?
Yeah, that's good. And I think I'll put an eyebrows up in here.
Get him!
Maybe if we had a second one like this, and then you can see that we can drag them straight into another marker like this. And then instead of blending in and then out, it blends in from one and into the other. Now this might seem a bit pointless having two of the same emotion next to each other, but if I change the intensity on this second one to something a lot lower, you can see we can create quite kind of nuanced effects.
Get him!
Yeah. fairly happy with that.
Get him!
Cool. The final thing that I added in that first version of the clip was a gesture. Now, in between the two episodes, I went into the project settings screen here, like I showed you in the first episode, and I actually added one animation gesture, this thing called Point Back. Now, I downloaded this animation off of mixamo.com, and it's a simple pointing behind your back animation, like this. Any animations that will work with your character can be used as gestures. In this case it's a full body animation, but often you might want to instead just use a masked one, just for the head or the upper body. In this case, let's just go ahead and add that gesture, say somewhere around there to start with. Now, one thing to note is that gestures aren't previewed in preview mode, so we'll have to see how good that looks a little bit later in play mode. For now though, we'll say we're happy with that. I'll turn off the preview, and let's save this. I'll just call it Get Him Mark 2. Okay, that's our asset saved, and we can close the clip editor. Now, in order for that animation to work as a gesture, we have to add it to the character. I've actually already gone ahead and done this, but if you were creating a character for the first time, after adding your gesture to the project settings, you could then go to the Gestures tab on your character, and you should find that you'll now have, once you've dragged your animator into this animator box here, you'll have a little thing that says Gestures here, and a couple of warnings saying that they haven't all been set up. You'll just want to drag your animation, like we have here, point behind, into the field for that gesture, and any other gestures that you have, you'll be able to drag in separate animations for each of them. You'll then just want to press Begin Setup, and we get a little setup wizard here where you can add a new layer to your animator controller, or if you've already set it up like we have here, you can use an existing layer. So we just pick LipSync Gestures, press Continue, and then you can choose a few basic settings like the transition time, which is how long it will take when a gesture is triggered to move from the idle animation into the gesture animation. And you can also choose, at least when you're creating a new layer, you can choose if you want it to be additive or overwrite. Here it will list all the triggers for each of the gestures. Those can usually be left as is, and then you can just press Finish. So that's the gesture set up on the character, and we have got our new LipSync data clip. Now I created a quick script that I put on the camera here called LipSync Trigger, and I'll just drag in, instead of that first version, I'll drag in Get Him Mark 2, which is the new clip we created. And now let's just play that back and see how it looks.
What are you waiting for? Get him!